The small human ship appeared at the edge of Cretharian space without warning. It was nothing like the massive warships of the Empire. The vessel looked simple, almost crude compared to the sleek Imperial designs, but something about its arrival made Admiral Vextar feel uneasy. The ship sent a message on all frequencies. A human woman appeared on the screens throughout the Imperial fleet. She had dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. Her voice was steady and clear. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Defiance. I bring a message from Earth to the Cretharian Empire. This is your only warning. Do not approach Earth. Do not assault our homeworld. You have been warned." The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. The human ship just sat there waiting. Admiral Vextar stared at the screen in his command center. Around him, his officers looked confused. The Cretharian Empire ruled over 1,000 worlds. They had conquered species far more advanced than these humans. No one had ever dared to threaten the Empire like this. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Commander Theknal, his second in command. Vextar thought for a moment. The humans had barely left their own solar system. Imperial scouts had reported that Earth had no major defenses, no real fleet, nothing that could threaten the Empire. These humans must be desperate or insane. "Open a channel," Vextar ordered. The communication screen flickered to life. Captain Chen appeared again, still calm and patient. "Human," Vextar began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had crushed dozens of rebellions. "You dare to threaten the Cretharian Empire? You are nothing. Your world is nothing. Surrender now and we might allow your species to live as slaves." Captain Chen listened without showing any emotion. When Vextar finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Admiral, I understand you think we are weak. Your scouts have told you that Earth has no defenses. You believe we are easy prey?" She paused, and for the first time something flickered in her eyes. "You are wrong. I have delivered our warning. What you do next is your choice. You speak of choices?" Vextar laughed. "Your only choice is to surrender or die. No, Admiral. Your choice is to listen to our warning or ignore it. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. The human ship began to move away from the Imperial fleet. Vextar felt anger rising in his chest. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever dismissed the might of the Empire so casually. "Sir, should we pursue?" asked Commander Theknal. "Let them run," Vextar said. "Contact the High Command. Tell them about this conversation." 2 hours later, Vextar stood before the holographic image of Emperor Shaltek himself. The Emperor's golden eyes burned with interest as Vextar finished his report. "These humans actually threatened us?" the Emperor asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. They seemed to believe their warning would make us turn away." Emperor Shaltek was quiet for a moment. He had ruled the Empire for over 200 years. He had seen many species try to resist Imperial expansion. Most begged for mercy. Some fought with desperate courage, but none had ever sent a simple warning and then calmly waited. "What do our intelligence reports say about this Earth?" the Emperor asked. General Mordak, head of Imperial Intelligence, stepped forward. "The planet appears poorly defended, Your Majesty. They have some basic satellites and a small collection of ships that barely qualify as military vessels. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Most of their population still lives on the planet's surface." "Population?" the Emperor asked. "Approximately 8 billion, Your Majesty." 8 billion. The Emperor considered this. "That is significant, but they have no real defenses?" "None that our scouts could detect, Your Majesty." Emperor Shaltek made his decision. "Admiral Vextar, take the 7th Fleet to this Earth. If the humans surrender immediately, accept it. If they resist," he paused, "make an example of them. The galaxy must understand that no one threatens the Empire." "Yes, Your Majesty," Vextar said. He felt excitement building in his chest. The 7th Fleet was one of the Empire's most powerful formations. 200 warships, including his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Eternal Glory. It would be more than enough to crush these upstart humans. 3 days later, the 7th Fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the preparations. Around him, officers worked at their stations with efficient precision. "Admiral," reported Navigation Officer Kelthar, "all ships report ready for jump." "Good. Set course for the Sol system. It's time these humans learned their place." The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward Earth. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Chen watched the Imperial fleet jump away on her long-range sensors. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Critharians took the bait. They're coming with a full fleet just as we hoped. Message sent, Captain. Chen nodded and looked out at the stars. The Critharians thought they were dealing with a primitive, defenseless world. They had no idea what humanity had been preparing for. They had no idea what Earth really was. The Empire would learn soon enough. Humanity had tried to warn them. They had given the Critharians a chance to walk away. But the Empire was too proud, too arrogant to listen. Captain Chen felt almost sorry for them. Almost. Set course for Earth, she ordered. Best speed. The Defiance turned toward home, racing to prepare for what was coming. Behind them, empty space held no trace of their passage. The Critharians would find no clues about what they were really flying into. Admiral Vextar sat in his command chair as the 7th Fleet traveled through hyperspace. He was already planning the conquest of Earth. The humans would probably surrender as soon as they saw his fleet. Most species did. But if they chose to fight, it would be over quickly. He had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. Earth would be number 48. The Admiral had no way of knowing that he was flying into the most carefully prepared trap in human history. He had no idea that every assumption his intelligence services had made about Earth was wrong. He didn't know that humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Most importantly, he didn't understand what Captain Chen's warning really meant. The humans hadn't threatened the Empire. They had tried to save it. The 7th Fleet continued its journey toward Earth, confident in their power and certain of their victory. In 3 weeks, they would reach the Sol system. In 3 weeks, they would learn the true meaning of Captain Chen's words. In 3 weeks, the Critharian Empire would discover that some warnings should be heeded. 3 weeks after leaving Imperial space, the 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Glory, studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. Report, he ordered. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple human settlements, reported Sensor Officer Dalmore. Mars has several colonies. The outer moons show signs of mining operations and research stations. Nothing that looks heavily defended. Vextar nodded. Everything matched their intelligence reports. The humans had spread out into their solar system, but they hadn't built the kind of defenses a serious military power would construct. What about their fleet? Vextar asked. Detected 43 vessels of various sizes near Earth's orbit. Most appear to be converted civilian ships. A few look like purpose-built warships, but they're small. Nothing larger than a cruiser. Commander Theknal leaned closer to his admiral. Sir, they have fewer than 50 ships against our 200. This will be a massacre. Good, Vextar said. The easier the victory, the less damage to their infrastructure. The Emperor prefers conquered worlds intact. The Imperial fleet began moving toward the inner system. Their massive dreadnoughts and battleships formed an impressive sight as they advanced in perfect formation. Vextar felt pride as he watched his fleet. The 7th Fleet was the finest military force in the galaxy. These humans had no idea what real power looked like. As they passed Neptune's orbit, something appeared on their sensors. A single ship moving to intercept them. Vextar recognized it immediately. It's the same ship from before, sir, reported Dalmore. The Defiance. They're actually coming back? Theknal asked in disbelief. One ship against our entire fleet? Vextar smiled coldly. Perhaps they've come to surrender. Open a channel. Captain Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly the same as before. Calm, composed, almost peaceful. Vextar found her attitude irritating. Admiral, Chen said simply, I see you decided not to listen to our warning. Your warning was noted and dismissed, Vextar replied. You have one chance to surrender unconditionally. If you do, your species might survive as Imperial subjects. Captain Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried something that made Vextar uncomfortable. Pity. Admiral, I strongly advise you to turn your fleet around and leave our system. This is your final warning. Vextar felt his anger flare. This human woman was actually trying to warn him again. Her single ship sat there calmly while his 200 warships surrounded her. Final warning? Vextar laughed. Look around you, human. Your pathetic little ship is surrounded by the finest fleet in the galaxy. You have no weapons that can threaten us. Your entire species combined cannot match the firepower I command. I understand you believe that, Chen said quietly. Admiral, when this is over, remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that we gave you every chance to leave peacefully. When this is over, Vextar snarled, your species will be extinct or enslaved. Those are the only options you have earned. Captain Chen looked directly at him through the screen. For a moment, Vexatar thought he saw something dangerous in her eyes, something that reminded him of a predator watching prey. We tried to save you, Chen said simply. Remember that. The transmission ended. The Defiance immediately turned toward Earth and began accelerating away from the Imperial fleet. Sir, should we pursue and destroy them? Asked Thecnal. Let them run to Earth, Vextar said. We'll catch them soon enough. Besides, I want their leaders to see our fleet approaching. Fear will make them more likely to surrender. The Imperial fleet continued toward Earth. Vextar watched the Defiance fleeing ahead of them and felt satisfaction. Finally, the humans were showing proper fear. But as they got closer to Earth, something began bothering Vextar. His sensors were picking up strange readings. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology in the Imperial database. The readings seemed to be coming from Earth itself. Dalmor, what are those energy readings? Unknown, sir. The patterns don't match anything in our files. They appear to be coming from the planet's surface, but they're very faint. Probably primitive power generation, Thecnal suggested. These humans still live on planetary surfaces. They probably burn fossil fuels or use crude nuclear reactors. Vextar nodded, but something still felt wrong. The fleeing human fleet had reached Earth's orbit and was taking position near the planet. From this distance, the human formation looked desperate and disorganized. Sir, Dalmor reported, we're detecting some kind of gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Very subtle, but our sensors are picking them up. Natural phenomena, Thecnal said dismissively. This is a young star system. Probably leftover debris from planetary formation. Vextar wasn't so sure. Something about this entire situation felt off. The humans had been too calm, too confident. No species facing extinction should act the way Captain Chen had acted. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth, Communications Officer Rixdal announced. Put it through. A new human appeared on the screen. This one was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore what looked like a military uniform. I am General Marcus Webb, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. Admiral, I'm ordering you to halt your advance immediately and withdraw from our system. Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're ordering me? Human, you are in no position to order anything. Surrender now or be destroyed. General Webb shook his head slowly. Admiral, your intelligence is wrong. Earth is not defenseless. We are not weak. Turn around now while you still can. Your 43 ships against my 200? Vextar laughed. Your planet has no orbital defenses, no shield generators, nothing that can stop us. Admiral, Webb said quietly, you have no idea what you're walking into. Last chance. Leave now. The only thing I'm walking into is a simple conquest. Your world will burn unless you surrender in the next 10 minutes. General Webb stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly as if making a difficult decision. So be it, Webb said. You've made your choice. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on your souls. The transmission ended. Vexatar felt a chill run down his spine. There had been something in the human general's voice. Not fear, not desperation. Something else. Something that reminded him of the way he himself sounded just before ordering the destruction of a rebellious world. Sir, new contacts appearing on sensors. Dalmor reported suddenly. Multiple ships decloaking throughout the system. What? Vextar spun to look at the tactical display. New symbols were appearing everywhere. Ships that hadn't been there moments before were suddenly visible. How many? He demanded. Dalmor's hands flew over his controls. Still counting, sir. At least 300. Maybe more. The tactical display now showed human ships scattered throughout the Sol system. They had been hiding, waiting. The Imperial fleet was no longer surrounding a handful of desperate defenders. They were surrounded themselves. Sir, Dalmor said, his voice shaking slightly, I'm detecting massive energy buildups on Earth's surface. Whatever those readings were before, they're increasing rapidly. Vextar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The humans hadn't been running in fear. They had been leading his fleet exactly where they wanted them. All ships, he ordered, battle stations. We may have walked into a trap. But even as he gave the order, Vextar knew it was too late. The humans had been planning this. They had wanted the Empire to come to Earth. They had been waiting. Captain Chen's words echoed in his mind. We tried to save you. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vextar wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Vextar watched his tactical display with growing dread. The Sol system was transforming before his eyes. What had seemed like an easy conquest minutes ago now looked like a carefully planned ambush. Report on those new contacts, he ordered. Sensor Officer Dalmore worked frantically at his station.
Sir, the human fleet now numbers over 400 ships.
Many of them are much larger than our initial scans indicated. They were using some kind of stealth technology to hide their true size and numbers. Stealth technology? Commander Theknal asked. But our intelligence said they were primitive. Our intelligence was wrong, Vextar said grimly. He studied the display more carefully. The human ships were positioned throughout the system in a pattern that looked random at first glance. But as he looked closer, he began to see the design. Every Imperial ship was covered by multiple human vessels. Every escape route was blocked. Sir, Dalmore continued, I'm also detecting massive structures rising from Earth's oceans. They appear to be some kind of weapons platforms. Show me, Vextar ordered. The main screen switched to a view of Earth. The blue planet that had looked so peaceful was changing. Huge metal structures were rising from the ocean floors, water streaming off them as they emerged. Each structure was the size of a city and bristled with weapons. How many? Vextar asked. Still counting, sir. At least 20 major platforms, plus smaller installations appearing all over the planet's surface. Theknal stared at the screen in shock. How did our scouts miss all of this? Before anyone could answer, the communications board lit up. A transmission was coming from Earth, but not through normal channels. It was being broadcast on every frequency, to every ship in the Imperial fleet. General Webb appeared on every screen throughout the 7th Fleet. Behind him, Vextar could see what looked like a massive command center filled with humans working at countless stations. Admiral Vextar, Webb began, you asked how your scouts missed our defenses. The answer is simple. We let them see exactly what we wanted them to see. The screen split. On one side, Webb continued speaking. On the other side, images began to appear. Vextar recognized them as recordings from Imperial scout ships, the same reports that had convinced the Empire that Earth was defenseless. Your scouts saw our world as we chose to present it, Webb explained. A peaceful planet with minimal defenses. What they didn't see were the weapons platforms hidden beneath our oceans, the stealth fleet stationed throughout our system, the planetary defense grid that we've been building for over 200 years. 200 years? Vextar whispered. As if hearing him, Webb nodded. We've known about the Critharian Empire for a very long time, Admiral. We've been watching you conquer world after world, species after species. We've studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses, and we've been preparing. The images on the screen changed. Now they showed human factories, vast underground complexes, shipyards hidden in asteroid belts. The scale was staggering. Earth hadn't just built defenses, they had turned their entire system into a fortress. But that's not the most important thing you need to understand, Webb continued. The most important thing is what humanity is, what we are as a species. New images appeared. These were older, from Earth's own history. Vextar saw humans fighting with primitive weapons, then more advanced ones. He saw massive armies clashing on battlefields, cities burning, weapons that could destroy entire continents. We are a species that has been at war with itself for our entire history, Webb said. We have fought over territory, resources, ideas, religions. We have perfected every form of warfare imaginable. We have weapons that can kill millions in seconds and tactics that can defeat enemies 10 times our size. The images showed human soldiers in every kind of environment, frozen wastelands, burning deserts, underwater, and space. They showed humans fighting with desperate courage against impossible odds. We don't want to conquer the galaxy, Webb continued. We could have expanded aggressively decades ago, but we chose not to. We prefer peace. But Admiral, understand this, we are very, very good at war. Vextar felt cold sweat on his forehead. The humans were broadcasting their military history to his entire fleet. His officers were seeing the same images he was seeing. They were beginning to understand what they had walked into. Every human child learns about the great battles of our past, Webb said. We study strategy the way other species study art. We understand that warfare is not just about having better weapons. It's about thinking faster, adapting quicker, and being willing to pay any price for victory. The images changed again. Now they showed modern human military exercises. Vextar watched human forces coordinate with mechanical precision, while showing creativity that no computer could match. He saw them turn everyday objects into weapons, use their enemy's strength against them, sacrifice some forces to save others. "We tried to warn you away," Webb said sadly. "Captain Chen went to your space personally to give you a chance to avoid this. But you wouldn't listen. You thought we were weak because we're peaceful. You made the same mistake every bully makes. You confused kindness with weakness." Around the command center of the Eternal Glory, Vextar's officers were staring at the screens in horror. They were finally understanding what their admiral was beginning to realize. They hadn't come to conquer Earth. They had been lured into a trap by masters of warfare. "Admiral," Webb said, looking directly at the camera, "you have 200 ships. We know the exact capabilities of everyone. We know your tactics, your standard formations, your emergency procedures. We've been studying the Critharian military for 2 centuries. The display switched to show technical diagrams of Imperial ships. The humans had detailed information about every class of vessel in the 7th Fleet. "Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons," Webb continued. "Your armor is built to resist plasma cannons and particle beams. Your tactics assume you're fighting other species who think like you do." Vexitar realized where this was going. "But Admiral, we don't fight like anyone else. We don't use the same weapons everyone else uses. And we definitely don't think like anyone else." The transmission switched to show the human fleet. Vextar could see that their ships were very different from Imperial designs. They looked more functional, less elegant. But there was something about them that radiated danger. "We use kinetic weapons, Admiral. Chunks of metal fired at incredible speeds. Your shields won't stop them. We use nuclear warheads, chemical explosives, and things your scientists have never imagined. We turn asteroids into missiles and use your own ships as weapons against you." Images appeared showing human weapons in action during their historical wars. Vextar saw the devastating power of nuclear weapons, the precision of railguns, the chaos of chemical warfare. "Most importantly, Admiral, we fight like humans. We're creative. We're adaptable. We're absolutely ruthless when we need to be, and we never ever give up." General Webb's face filled the screen again. Behind him, Vextar could see hundreds of humans working at their stations with calm efficiency. "You came here expecting to conquer a defenseless world," Webb said. "Instead, you've brought your fleet into a system designed by humanity's greatest military minds as the perfect killing ground. Every asteroid has been positioned. Every piece of space debris has been weaponized. Every route in or out of this system is covered by our guns." Vextar looked at his tactical display again. Now that he understood what he was seeing, the human positions made perfect sense. They had turned the entire Sol system into a death trap. "Admiral," Webb said quietly, "you still have one choice left. Surrender now, and we'll treat your crews according to the laws of war. Keep fighting, and we'll show you why humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy things." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Glory in silence. Vextar stared at the tactical display, finally understanding the truth. The humans had never been prey. They were predators who had disguised themselves as victims, and he had led his entire fleet directly into their jaws. Admiral Vextar stood frozen on his bridge for 30 seconds after General Webb's transmission ended. Around him, his officers waited for orders that seemed impossible to give. Finally, he made his choice. "All ships, Battle Formation 7, prepare to break through their lines and escape the system." "Sir?" Commander Thekanal asked quietly. "Shouldn't we consider surrendering?" Vextar turned to face his second-in-command. "The Critharian Empire does not surrender to primitives. We'll fight our way out and return with a larger fleet." Even as he spoke, Vextar knew his words sounded hollow. But he was an Imperial admiral. He had his duty. "All ships report ready, sir," Communications Officer Riksdahl announced. "Begin the attack. Target the largest human vessels first." The 7th Fleet opened fire. 200 Imperial warships unleashed their full power at the human defenders. Plasma cannons and particle beams lit up the space around Earth as the Empire struck first. For a moment, Vextar felt hope. Several human ships disappeared in explosions of fire and metal. The Imperial weapons were working exactly as they should. Then the humans responded. The first indication that something was wrong came from the sensor officer. "Sir, incoming projectiles." "But they're not energy weapons. They're solid objects. Solid objects? Technol asked. Before Dalmor could answer, the first kinetic rounds hit the Imperial fleet. Chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds punched through shields designed to stop energy weapons. Ships that had survived dozens of battles against other Imperial fleets were torn apart by simple pieces of iron traveling at 30% of light. Speed shields are useless against solid projectiles at these velocities, Dalmor reported, his voice shaking. The kinetic energy is too great. Vexitar watched in horror as 3 of his destroyers were destroyed in the first salvo. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Imperial arsenal. Instead of elegant energy beams, they used brute force and physics. Return fire. All weapons! The Imperial fleet continued shooting, but the humans weren't fighting like any enemy Vexitar had ever faced. Instead of staying in formation and trading shots, they scattered and regrouped constantly. They used the asteroids in the system as cover, popping out to fire and then disappearing again. Sir, the humans are using hit-and-run tactics, Technol observed. They won't stand and fight. But Vexitar was beginning to understand that this wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. The humans were forcing the Imperial fleet to chase them through a system the humans knew perfectly. Every pursuit led the Imperial ships into another ambush. Admiral, Dalmor called out. Massive energy surge from Earth's surface. The ocean-based weapons platforms that had risen earlier now opened fire. But these weren't the precise energy weapons the Empire used. These were railguns, massive magnetic accelerators that fired projectiles at velocities that made normal kinetic weapons look slow. The first shot from Earth took out the Imperial dreadnought Crimson Victory. The massive ship, one of the most powerful in the fleet, was cut in half by a tungsten rod fired from the planet's surface. The projectile punched through the ship's armor like it was paper. How is this possible? Technol whispered. Vexitar was asking himself the same question. The Imperial fleet had superior technology, better ships, more experience. But the humans were winning through pure tactical superiority and weapons that ignored Imperial defenses. Sir, we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet, Riksdal announced. The humans are targeting our engines and weapon systems specifically. They're trying to disable us, not destroy us. This confused Vexitar until he realized what was happening. Some of the human attacks were designed to kill, but others were surgical strikes meant to leave Imperial ships helpless. Then he watched what the humans did with the disabled vessels. The human ships moved in and attached magnetic grapples to the disabled Imperial vessels. Then they began using the captured ships as weapons, accelerating them and ramming them into healthy Imperial ships. They were turning Vexitar's own fleet against itself. This is impossible, Technol said. No civilized species fights like this. They're not civilized, Vexitar replied grimly. There's something else entirely. As the battle continued, Vexitar began to see the true scope of human tactical thinking. They didn't just fight with ships and weapons. They fought with everything. Asteroids became missiles. Space debris became shrapnel bombs. They even used the gravity of planets to slingshot projectiles at impossible angles. Sir, the humans are using nuclear weapons, Dalmor reported in shock. Nuclear weapons? In space? Vexitar watched as human ships fired primitive atomic warheads at his fleet. The weapons were crude compared to Imperial technology, but they were devastatingly effective. Each explosion created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled Imperial electronics, while scattering radioactive debris that made entire areas of space impassable. Admiral, Technol said, we need to retreat. We're losing too many ships. Vexitar looked at his tactical display. In just 20 minutes of combat, he had lost over 50 ships. The humans were dismantling his fleet with surgical precision, while taking minimal losses themselves. All ships, fall back to the edge of the system. We'll regroup and break out together. But as the Imperial fleet tried to retreat, they discovered another aspect of human planning. The escape routes were mined. The humans had seeded the space around every jump point with hidden explosives and kinetic weapons. Sir, the jump points are blocked, the navigation officer reported. The humans have weapons covering every exit from the system. Vexitar felt despair growing in his chest. The humans had thought of everything. They had turned the entire Sol system into a prison from which there was no escape. Admiral, Dalmor called out urgently. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. Captain Chen appeared on the main screen. She was aboard a human battleship now, standing on a bridge that looked nothing like Imperial design. Everything about it was functional, efficient, built for war. "Admiral Vextar," she said, "you've seen what we can do. This doesn't have to continue. Surrender now and we'll stop the attack." "Never," Vextar snarled. "The Empire does not surrender." Captain Chen looked sad. "Then you've chosen to sacrifice your crews for pride. I'm sorry about that." The transmission ended. What happened next would haunt Vextar for the rest of his life. The humans stopped playing with the Imperial fleet. Instead of precise surgical attacks, they unleashed their full power. Every weapon in the Sol system fired at once. Railguns from Earth, missiles from the asteroid belt, kinetic bombardment from the human fleet. The space around the Imperial fleet became a storm of metal and fire. Vextar watched as ship after ship died around him. The humans fought with a coordinated fury that was unlike anything he had ever seen. They moved like a single organism, while showing individual creativity that no computer could match. But worst of all was their willingness to sacrifice themselves. When Imperial ships got too close to important human positions, human pilots would ram their own ships into the enemy vessels without hesitation. They treated their own lives as just another weapon to be used. "Sir," Technal said quietly, "they're not just trying to win. They're trying to make sure none of us escape to warn the Empire." Vextar realized his second-in-command was right. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were making sure that the Empire would never learn the truth about human capabilities. "All remaining ships," Vextar ordered, "concentrate fire on that battleship, the one with Captain Chen aboard, if we can kill their leader." But even as he gave the order, Vextar knew it was hopeless. The humans had planned for everything. Even if they killed Chen, there would be others ready to take command. The Battle of Sol continued for 3 more hours. By the end, only 19 Imperial ships remained operational out of the original 200. The rest were either destroyed or disabled beyond repair. Admiral Vextar sat in his command chair aboard the burning wreck of the Eternal Glory, watching the human fleet surround his survivors. He had led the finest fleet in the Empire into battle against primitives, and the primitives had won. 3 days after the Battle of Sol ended, a single Imperial ship limped into Cretharian space. The light cruiser Distant Thunder had been the fastest vessel in the 7th Fleet, and Captain Chen had deliberately allowed it to escape. Admiral Vextar sat in the ship's small medical bay, staring at nothing while medics treated his injuries. 18 other survivors from various ships shared the cramped vessel with him. They were all that remained of the 200 ships and 50,000 crew members that had entered the Sol system. The silence aboard the ship was broken only by the whispered prayers of those who still believed their gods might listen. When the Distant Thunder reached the Imperial capital world of Krythanos, emergency medical teams were waiting. But the physical wounds of the survivors would heal much faster than the psychological ones. Every man and woman who had witnessed the battle carried the same haunted expression. Emperor Shalthek convened an emergency session of the War Council within hours of hearing the news. Admiral Vextar was brought directly from the medical center, still wearing bandages and walking with the aid of a support cane. The great council chamber fell silent as Vextar entered. These were the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy, beings who had conquered dozens of species and ruled over 1,000 worlds. But they all stared at the broken admiral with something approaching fear. "Report," Emperor Shalthek commanded simply. Vextar stood as straight as his injuries would allow. "Your Majesty, the 7th Fleet has been destroyed. Of 200 ships, only 19 survived the initial battle. Most of those were captured by human forces. The Distant Thunder escaped only because the humans allowed it to." "Allowed it to?" General Mordak interrupted. "Why would they do that?" "To send a message," Vextar replied. "They wanted survivors to return and tell you what happened." Emperor Shalthek leaned forward in his throne. "Tell us exactly what happened, Admiral. Leave out nothing." For the next hour, Vextar described the battle in detail. He told them about the hidden human defenses, the kinetic weapons that ignored Imperial shields, the tactical superiority that had turned his fleet into scrap metal. He described weapons that used nuclear fire and strategies that sacrificed human lives without hesitation. When he finished, the council chamber was silent for a long moment. "You're telling us," General Mordak said slowly, "that a species we thought was primitive defeated the 7th Fleet using crude kinetic weapons and suicide tactics." "Not crude," Vextar corrected. Effective. Everything the humans did was carefully planned and perfectly executed. They turned our strengths into weaknesses and used our own assumptions against us. But how could our intelligence be so wrong? Asked Admiral Kethvar, commander of the Third Fleet. Because the humans made sure it was wrong, Vextar explained. They showed our scouts exactly what they wanted us to see. They've been studying us for centuries, learning our tactics and our technology. Meanwhile, we knew nothing about them. Emperor Shalthek was quiet during this exchange. Finally, he spoke. What is your assessment of human military capabilities, Admiral? Vextar met his Emperor's gaze directly. Your Majesty, they are the most dangerous military force I have ever encountered. They don't just fight to win. They fight like warfare is their natural state. They understand strategy and tactics better than our finest generals, and they have weapons and methods we've never seen before. But surely the full might of the Empire, Admiral Kethvar began, would lose, Vextar said flatly. Your Majesty, the humans didn't use their full strength against us. The battle was a demonstration, not a desperate last stand. They could have destroyed my entire fleet in the first hour if they had wanted to. The implications of this statement caused an uproar in the council chamber. Voices rose as generals and admirals argued about the possibility that any single world could threaten the Empire. Emperor Shalthek raised his hand for silence. Are you suggesting we cannot conquer Earth? I'm suggesting we should not try, Vextar replied. The humans made it clear they have no interest in expanding beyond their current territory. They want to be left alone. We should grant them that wish. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives, General Mordak declared. They are not primitives, Vextar said sharply. That was our mistake. We saw a species that preferred peace and assumed they were weak. We were wrong. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency broadcasts announced that every communication array in the Empire was receiving an incoming transmission. The source was listed as Earth. In the council chamber, a massive holographic display activated. Captain Sarah Chen appeared, standing on what looked like the bridge of a human warship. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations with calm efficiency. Emperor Shalthek, Chen began. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I bring a message from the government of Earth to the leadership of the Critharian Empire. The Emperor looked around the council chamber. His advisors were all staring at the display with various expressions of shock and anger. No one had ever broadcast directly into the Imperial Palace before. You sent a fleet to our system with the intention of conquest, Chen continued. That fleet has been destroyed. We return to you the survivors as a gesture of goodwill, but understand this clearly. Earth is not to be approached with hostile intent again. Emperor Shalthek found his voice. Human, you dare to dictate terms to the Critharian Empire? Chen's expression didn't change. I am not dictating terms, Your Majesty. I'm explaining reality. Your scouts have observed our defensive capabilities. Your military leaders have seen detailed recordings of the battle. You know what happened to your 7th Fleet. The display split to show footage from the battle. The assembled generals watched in horror as Imperial ships were systematically destroyed by human weapons and tactics. We have no desire for conquest, Chen said. We do not want your worlds or your resources. We wish to be left alone to develop in peace, but understand that we will defend ourselves with whatever force is necessary. You threaten the Empire? Emperor Shalthek asked. No, Your Majesty. We are offering you a choice. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Continue to threaten Earth and we will respond accordingly. General Mordak stepped forward. What gives you the right to make demands of us? Captain Chen looked directly at him. The same right that any free species has. The right to exist without interference. We did not ask for this conflict. We warned you to stay away. You chose to ignore that warning. The display showed more footage from the battle, including scenes of human pilots ramming their ships into Imperial vessels and human weapons tearing through Imperial armor like paper. We are a peaceful species, Chen continued, but we are not a weak one. We have studied warfare for our entire history. We understand it in ways that most species never will. We hope you will choose wisdom over pride. Emperor Shalthek felt anger rising in his chest. And if we choose to mobilize the full might of the Empire against you? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a sadness that somehow made her words more terrifying. Then you will learn why humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. You will discover what happens when a species that treats warfare as natural as breathing decides that peace is no longer an option. The transmission showed images of human colonies throughout their space. Each one was fortifying with the same efficiency that Earth had shown. Weapons platforms were rising from planetary surfaces. Fleets were gathering in every human system. "We are not expanding beyond our current borders," Chen said. "We have no interest in ruling other species or taking their worlds. But every human system is now a fortress. Every human ship is now a weapon of war. Every human citizen is now a soldier." The scale of human preparation was staggering. In just the few days since the battle, they had transformed their entire civilization into a military force. "This is our final message to the Critharian Empire," Chen concluded. "We have marked the boundaries of human space. Do not cross them. Do not approach our worlds. Do not threaten our people. We want peace, but we are prepared for war." The transmission showed one final image, a star map of human space with clear boundary markers. Sol system and all human colonies are now designated as protected space. Any Imperial vessel that enters human territory will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. "We hope this will be the last communication necessary between our species." Captain Chen looked directly at the camera one final time. "We tried to warn you, Emperor Shalthek. We gave you every chance to avoid bloodshed. Remember that when you make your decision about what comes next." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Emperor Shalthek looked around at his generals and admirals. These were beings who had never known defeat, who had built an empire spanning 1,000 worlds. But he could see fear in their eyes. Admiral Vextar broke the silence. "Your Majesty, I recommend we accept their terms." "You would have us bow to aliens?" General Mordock demanded. "I would have us survive," Vextar replied. "Your Majesty, the humans are offering us a way to avoid a war we might not win. They want to be left alone. Perhaps we should grant them that wish." Emperor Shalthek was quiet for a long time. Finally, he made his decision.